that I love. One, I'm a personal friend of. I can tell you that. No, not Joe Bob. This guy. Well, first let me just say, Svengoolie, everybody, and the great, legendary Joe Bob Briggs. And they will entertain you for the next 25 hours.
Hello. This is really a great thing because we've talked in the past about doing something together, and they kind of fell through a couple times. But this is really nice because I've always admired Joe Bob, and I even was a guest on his show, which was very kind of him. So
How many saw that episode? What was your honest opinion of how Svengoolie came out of the cake?
Well, yeah, I should explain that. First of all, it was like a surprise. Somebody's going to be coming out of the cake. Now, you've got Darcy there, and you're going to have me coming out of the cake. But it was a surprise for Joe Bob. So they had this magnificently built cake, and there was one problem. They hadn't figured on me wearing a top hat, so they could close the top of it. So it was like, well, you can just kind of bend down a little bit. Now, I'm an old man. Let's face it. My knees don't work perfectly. And I'm trying to hunch down, and we couldn't do it. And the guys on his crew, just like that, they shifted things around, put things under it, and in like 10 minutes or so, it was fixed. My knees were not, but it was cool, and it worked out. It was a lot of fun. That was a great show. I had so much fun there.
We were honored to have you on this show.
No.
Yeah. So, are we going to take questions? Do we have topics here?
I thought you know how this was.
Actually, you know why we never did that show together?
Was that?
You kept rejecting the movies. We were going to show movies at the Music Box, and you said, I don't know, that's a hard R. You had restrictions on, I guess, what your overseers will let you host.
Metv is family entertainment, and they always caution me that you have to be really careful about what you're associated with. And I'm like, these are movies I would watch anyway, but it wasn't.
So
always...
Metv didn't want you doing I Spit on Your Grave, huh?
And I can't imagine why. It's perfect.
We gave you Cannibal Holocaust? No.
And then they gave me fried green tomatoes. That was not good.
Should we take questions?
Well, we should bring up what we were asked to bring up, the anniversary.
Yes. I'm the spokesperson for the, as you saw in this clip, for the 90th birthday of the drive-in. The drive-in is...
I also think that it's the 90th anniversary of somebody driving off with the speaker still attached to their window.
I'm sure it is. Although at the very first drive-in in Camden, New Jersey, in 1933, the owner, Richard Hollingshead, thought that he could just put up a big screen, park the cars in front of the screen, and get the most powerful speaker that he could find, some kind of industrial level military speaker, and put it by the screen and just, shoot it out at the cars. And that was actually what they did for the first, I don't know, at least the first year. And then they figured out, no, we're gonna have to try some other solution. This is not working for the romantic comedies with it, And so, but yeah, all across the country this year, the drive-ins are celebrating their 90th birthday, and there are more drive-ins today than there were before COVID, because COVID was the best thing that ever happened to drive-ins. Because when COVID happened, indoor theaters all closed, and so there were several weeks when the only box office first-run box office in the country was at drive-ins, and you could say that drive-ins saved the movie industry because there was actually no interruption of first-run releases because the drive-ins were there, and the very worst week of COVID, there was only one theater in the country showing first-run movies, and that was the Ocala Drive-In in Ocala, Florida. and
Wow.
So the total box office gross for the entire country was $17,000.
For the entire country.
For the entire country,
Man.
yes.
That's unreal. And we were talking about the fact that horror movies and drive-ins kind of meshed together. The popularity of a lot of the horror movies started at the drive-ins, and especially, the teenage crowd would come in for those. You'd get to see all the American International movies and the Roger Corman stuff, and it was great. And we were talking about the different directors who got their breaks in drive-in movies.
Yeah, and the big studios hated horror.
You're right.
Now you would think Universal would be an exception to the rule. No, even Universal, they had their classic movies and they played those to death. But nobody really, the big stars didn't want to be associated with horror. The big directors didn't want to be associated with horror. So anytime there was a horror movie that came out of a studio, it was an exception. There were a few like House of Wax and in the 50s, but horror was a low-budget indie film thing. And so who would play those movies? Well, drive-ins would play those movies. Why would drive-ins play those movies? Because studios wouldn't give their movies to drive-ins. They wouldn't give their A movies to drive-ins. And so great entrepreneurs like Sam Arkoff and Roger Corman and others figured out that a steady diet of horror films, what they used to call juvenile delinquent films,
Right, yes.
and rock and roll films in the 50s would create an audience at drive-ins, and that's how drive-ins got their sort of tawdry reputation for being the place you go to watch movies that your mother doesn't want you to see.
Or also, there were other tawdry things that happened at drive-ins, but it had nothing to do with the movie at the time.
So, and we celebrate that today by having sex at the drive-in.
Not us personally, but you understand what I'm saying. And we're talking about, great directors got their start with those drive-in movies. Francis Ford Coppola with Dementia 13, so many other great directors.
Peter Bogdanovich,
Sure.
Targets.
Right. With Boris Karloff.
With one of Boris Karloff's last performances,
Yeah.
and Roger Corman with Attack of the Crab Monsters, and I forget what the very first one was, the haunted creature from the ocean floor or something like that.
And all the William Castle stuff, which not only played in drive-ins, but also in theaters, so they could get in all his wacky sort of gimmicks that he would pull off. So the popularity of horror movies really, blossomed then in the 50s at drive-in movies.
Yeah, of course. I look at, there was a big change in 1968 when Night of the Living Dead came out, and suddenly you had it was kind of a hippie movie because it had the down ending,
Right, yeah.
and the down ending became a staple of horror.
Yeah.
They used to resolve in an optimistic way even in horror films.
Sure, with a couple walking off into the
Right.
sunrise there.
Night of the Living Dead changes all that. Everybody dies. And that became, then you have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you have Halloween, you have other kind of really negative. You don't necessarily feel good at the end of one of these movies.
Speaking of Halloween, if I may, I know there's a bone of contention between you and Darcy about Halloween 3. A movie which actually I ran in the early days of my show here at this company. And please explain to us what you have against that movie.
So you have this great movie called Halloween, and you have Jamie Lee Curtis, and you have Dr. Loomis, and you have, babysitters, and then you make another equally good movie, or some people think even better movie, called Halloween 2.
Sure.
It has Dr. Loomis, it has Jamie Lee Curtis, it has the babysitters. And then you make Halloween 3, and everybody gets ready to watch Jamie Lee Curtis and Dr. Loomis and the babysitters, and they say, oh, we're starting a new thing. Every movie called Halloween from now on is going to have a different story with a different cast, and there's going to be no Jamie Lee Curtis, there's going to be no Dr. Loomis. You do that on number 2! You don't do that on number 3! Because, and I really think the reason it failed, which it did, is audience expectations.
Sure.
You set up audience expectations with number 2, and then number 3 comes along and they go, what? Exploding masks on children? I don't think so. And then last summer at the drive-in in Memphis, we had Tommy Lee Wallace, the director of Halloween 3, and some of the cast members, and I said, Tommy Lee, tell me the plot of Halloween 3. Tell me, just explain exactly what's happening in Halloween 3. And he says, well, it's obvious from the movie. And I said, no, it's not obvious how in a small town in Northern California they have a piece of Stonehenge. And in the first scene of the movie, it says there's a little 20-second news item that says, "Oh, a piece of Stonehenge was stolen last night." Now that's like 20 days before Halloween. It's like tiny little news thing. Somebody stole some Stonehenge. All right, they stole one of the pillars at Stonehenge. And I'm like, first of all, wouldn't this be on every newscast in the entire world? Wouldn't it be on the front page of every newspaper? Stonehenge, giant 20,000-pound theft in the middle of the night. And then, how did you get the piece of Stonehenge, the 20-ton piece of Stonehenge, from southern England? And it's not near Heathrow.
No.
And how do you get it from southern England to a small town in Northern California without owning the biggest fucking Russian freighter plane in history? First of all, you got to get a Ford 150 or whatever's the toughest truck. You got to put it on the truck. You got to take it to Heathrow. Then you got to get the Russian plane to come, and so you can shove it into the Russian plane. Then you got to drive. You got to fly across 2 oceans and God knows how Arctic Circle, whatever, for a day and a half. And then you got to get it to the biggest airport in Northern California. And you put it on another F-150, and then you got to take it to the little small town in the middle of nowhere in Northern California. It's like, Tommy Lee, I don't think you had enough time to do that. and he was like, well, it's a movie. That was finally his argument. It's a movie,
yes,
And so anyway, we went over the whole plot of Halloween 3, and I remain opposed to Halloween. I also said, Tommy Lee, you can't kill the 9-year-old boy on camera. It's like, talk about something MeTV would not show Halloween 3.
Actually, we did.
You did? You showed the 9-year-old boy with the mask and
yeah, we might have
and the worms coming out?
Just slightly, but yeah.
Edited just slightly?
Yeah.
Like, there is no 9-year-old boy in the MeTV.
He was there, and he was watching TV, and suddenly he wasn't feeling well, and now a commercial for a car wash.
Okay. And then the female lead, I forget her name. What's her name?
Stacey Nelkin.
Stacey Nelkin becomes an android at some point in the movie. In order to follow how she becomes an android, you have to think, well, actually, she was an android when he first saw her at the beginning of the movie. Otherwise, when did she become an android? There was nothing in the movie to show how she would possibly become an android. She just suddenly turns into an android. What?
She carried the stone in.
She carried the stone from southern England to. Okay.
She was
Yeah.
deceptively
You
strong.
can work for Tommy Lee Wallace. So she was a robot the whole time, including the scene where Tom Atkins has sex with her.
Well, she also took a shower, so if she was an android and she was
Exactly.
in the shower,
She would start rusting.
short-circuited or something?
Yeah. All right. So I remain opposed to Halloween 3.
I understand now.
Darcy is not here to defend herself, but
Yeah, we're sorry she's not here. She had a family emergency, and she's doing okay, though.
she may be here tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, well. I was talking earlier about the fact that, here to do his mail, he has Darcy, and I have a prehistoric rubber chicken. Somehow it doesn't compare quite.
What's the worst movie you ever showed?
In all the time I've been doing this,
Yes.
I would have to say it's a tie between the 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T, that Dr. Seuss movie that at times even Dr. Seuss hated it because they did so many changes in it and cut out some of his songs, some of which probably deserved to be cut out. The other one was one I ran years ago. It was called Track of the Vampire. Now this movie was made in two places, in Los Angeles and also in some place like Romania. And it was very apparent that neither side knew what the other side was doing. So a lot of it didn't make sense. It was like an artist who ends up, killing people, and he's a vampire, but at times he doesn't seem like a vampire. And there's long, stupid stretches of, there's a girl dancing on the beach, and it's got the fly eye type lens with all the different images of her. And this goes on for like 6.5 minutes. And I remember sitting there going, why is she? I don't get that. And one time we did, when we do Spencer Round, where we replace dialogue or add some sound effects. I was so sick of them scheduling this movie for me that we did one whole sequence in Spencer Round. It had the vampire chasing a girl down, the street. So we redubbed it, and he was her swim coach, and she didn't want to go to practice. And eventually she ends up jumping into the ocean, and we wound it up, and there was a lifeguard who was a tall, bald guy, so I redubbed him as Curly Howard. And, I don't think this exists anywhere unless somebody, recorded it off the TV. But the funny thing is, and I'm always proud of this, how much attention those people at that station paid to my show. They never noticed it. And what's the worst one you've ever shown, might I ask? And I know it's not Halloween 3.
No, we've never shown Halloween 3.
I know.
Well, yes. I mean, that wasn't my choice to show Hogzilla. That probably is the worst movie I've ever shown. But we had one at TNT called Super Beast.
Oh man, yes.
Have you seen? Have you played
I
Super
played
Beast?
that many years ago. Yes.
There's no beast, much less a super beast. It's basically guys wandering around the woods in the Philippines for a couple of hours, And I never knew. I couldn't follow. It must have been several movies pieced together because I couldn't follow exactly what the plot was, where the Super Beast was, why they cared about the Super Beast.
Right.
Were they pursuing the Super Beast? Was the Super Beast attacking them? Were they going to bag the Super Beast, bring it back from the Philippines and do something with it? I never, but since we never saw the Super Beast, I didn't know. And so I actually, I got in trouble because I said, if anybody can successfully describe the plot of this movie in writing and tell us exactly what's going on in this movie, I'll send you a case of Old Milwaukee. I said that on the air. Okay. Oh, standards and practices went crazy. You know, you can't offer alcohol on the air, much less free alcohol. So the following week I said, obviously I was kidding. I'm not going to send you a case of anything. But we are having a contest, and you'll win some TNT bumper stickers or something. And so we got remarkable participation from people trying, unsuccessfully by the way, to describe the plot of Super Beast. But I remember that one specifically because it's like, periodically the people that run TNT would go over to these film markets that they have in Europe. They had one in Milan that was sort of oriented towards television, and there's these guys sitting at tables just like here at this event, only they're selling films. They're selling rights to films, and some of them have 500 films that have never been shown in the U.S. And so they go over to these film markets because they don't have enough material for the year, and they have certain film, and they can't watch them all.
Sure.
And they have certain films that they want, and so the guy will say, "Yeah, I can give you those 3 films if you buy these other 48." And they come back with these big film packages, and they say, "Joe Bob, all these are on your show." So that's how Super Beast ends up being, on Monstervision.
I remember we did a song in that one, like we do in all the shows, and it was to Super Freak. It was Super Beast, it's Super Beastie, and it still didn't make the movie make any sense, but kind of eased the pain a little bit.
Let me ask you this one, Sven. With accepting MeTV, no, we're not including MeTV in this question, okay? What's the stupidest note you ever got from the network or the station?
Well, that's so hard to say. One thing was that when I was at a previous station, the program director, he would show me the movies for the next few months, and he'd have a little tray, and their names were all on little Post-it notes on it. And he'd offer it like, you were offering an hors d'oeuvre tray to someone. And I'd look at him and I'd go, "No, I don't want to run that. No, I don't want to run that. No, I don't want to run that." And he'd go, "But that one's in color." And I was like, "What?" And there's also, we've had problems with people who don't hear things correctly. So they will think that, I'm saying probably words you would never hear on TV, broadcast TV. And so, someone in charge will say, did you say that? Because we're really going to be in trouble if you said that. And I was like, no, I never said that. And we have to find the tape and play it for them. And it's like, oh yeah, you didn't say that. And this is probably talking out of school.
No, that's because they got a letter from somebody saying that you said that, right?
Yes, exactly. And one letter from somebody. We had a guy who worked with us who did audio for a while. Jaime Tamaki, a Japanese Bolivian guy, great guy, a lot of fun. And when we end up the mail segments, I'd say, "Hit the theme, Jaime." We got a complaint from a Jewish group that said, "Who is he making fun of by saying Jaime?" And so we had to prove that we had to actually show him on camera. And it was like, he's Jaime Tamaki. That's exciting.
I used to make up, they had a list at TNT, they had a list of words and phrases that can't be used on the air, like an official list. And I used to make up nonsense words. If you had to say something, you're not supposed to say any words indicating the sexual act.
Right.
And so I would say aardvark. I'd say aardvark. And over the years, I built up quite a vocabulary. And one year, 3 of my words turn up on the official TNT. I said, these are not words. You have to show me where these are in some dictionary, And we actually had like a heated phone call where I said, you can't prevent me from saying nonsense words. This is what 3rd graders do. You can do this even in 3rd grade class. So, a lot of my humor was sort of like a 3rd grader. So, that's how serious, TNT got to be about any indication of any kind of sort of like your mother would say, your mind is in the gutter. It wouldn't be any specific thing you did or said or anything, but your mind is in the gutter. They had your mind is in the gutter person in TNT standards and practices.
I think they have that at most broadcast stations, seriously, because everybody has their rules about it, because they worry about the FCC, and the FCC is certainly not as strong as it was at one time, but still, it's a threat, because you could get sued, you could get the license taken away if you say certain things. So, you're kind of bound by it. On cable, I think you get a little more leeway, but in broadcast TV, you have to be real careful, and so that's why MeTV is family entertainment.
They're especially sensitive today about any word that could be construed as being, and it doesn't have to be a negative word, but any word that could be construed as being ethnic or about a certain nationality, and I don't mean it's a slur. It's just any word indicating that you are talking about an ethnicity or a nationality. Just don't go there.
Yeah.
It's just like, don't do it. Don't go there. Somebody will think it's a slur. So they're predicting, that even harmless things will be interpreted as slurs.
Yeah.
So you sort of have to get into the heads of the people that are like with the blue pencils, because they're saying, yeah, I know there's nothing wrong. There's actually nothing wrong with this sentence. However, I think a certain housewife in Encino might at some point think there is something wrong with it. That's how Byzantine some of this stuff becomes. So
yeah, and it's funny because literally a station can get one complaint and they'll be up in arms. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, we have to do something. We've got to check on this. And then, a lot of times there's nothing to it really. And even there, like I said, there's times when people think they hear things or see things, and they'll, raise a ruckus about it. And of course, that gets filtered down to guys like us, and we have to figure out ways to prove, no, we didn't do that.
One reason I admire Mae West so much is that when the Breen office came in and clamped down on suggestive content, she just said, give them all my scripts. I don't care. Because you know what? It's not what I say, it's the way I say it.
Very cool. Did you want to take some questions?
Yeah.
All right, if anyone has a question, please raise your hand.
There is a mic here if you want to.
And there's a mic there.
There's a mic
Hi,
in the
Mike.
middle of the
Nice
room.
to see you. No, wait. And it goes something like this.
It's kind of a
Leave it
low.
on the stand, my man.
What's that?
Leave it on the stand.
Okay, yeah. Anyway.
Otherwise, there's going to be a complaint, and it's going to go to the station, and we're going to end up in trouble.
Yeah. This is a family show.
And darn right.
So, real quick. Next month I'm finally marrying my girlfriend of 10 years, and a long time coming. And so I thought it would be kind of fun to ask real quick, getting advice for the soon-to-be new chain to her leg or whatever.
After 10 years,
Yeah,
you probably already learned to keep your mouth shut. So,
I am working on that.
okay. I would say make sure that every Saturday night you watch Metv, and on Friday nights you watch Shutter. Because the family that watches these things together stays together, at least for a few hours.
Fair enough. Anything from you, Joe, or just staying out?
I would actually go along with that because one thing I've learned about horror people, first of all, genre film people in general, but especially horror people, is they are the nicest people in the world, and something about horror makes them tolerant. It's the most tolerant people in the world, even though they're watching death and destruction and hatred and violence all the time. And yet, if you look at their at the lives that they share with me, like at the signing table and everything, they're the most loving people I've met in my whole life.
That's very true. Yeah. Same thing. People come up when we're signing, and they're so nice, and so kind, and they thank me for still doing this, and that's amazing to me, and that it means that much to so many people. And it's true. Everybody, for the most part, that's involved as fans of this stuff, they're really nice people. So you can't say, oh, he likes horror, he's terrible.
That's a real quick story. I know the day my gal was a keeper was a day